Through the years, there have been some really great samurai/ninja games, and we wanted to talk about some of our favorites. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on Game Ranks, 13 of the best samurai/ninja games out there. Quick disclaimer, Dynasty Warriors is based on the Chinese dynasty and not samurais or ninjas, so we're not talking about that in this video. Starting off at number 13 is Samurai Warriors 4, which was the 10th anniversary of the Samurai Warriors series. It came out in 2014. It's a hack and slash. It is very much like Dynasty Warriors. This is as close as we get in the list, might I add. Samurai Warriors 4 actually got a lot closer to the Dynasty Warriors formula than the previous game, though, particularly in the way that it does the story. Now, if you're interested in samurai and want to play a Dynasty Warriors type game, it's kind of an obvious one. It was first out on PlayStation 3, but then did come out on PlayStation 4, so it's still something you can play if you want. It is definitely a worthwhile game. It was the highest rated entry in the entire series, and well, the PlayStation 4 version had some updates that made it better. At number 12 is Aragami, which is a kind of underrated game in my opinion. It's not that it really got panned or anything, but it really never got a lot of attention. It was a game that came out on pretty much everything back in 2016. It's an action-adventure stealth game with like a massive amount of style. There's a lot of great abilities in it too. There's like teleportation that you charge by standing in shadows because you're using shadow energy. Shadow Essence. I can't exactly remember what it's called. I just remember that it's a ton of fun. And in all honesty, it's probably one of the best stealth games of the most recent console generation, frankly. It also came out on Switch in 2019, so if you're looking to play it, probably the easiest way to do it, because you can take it anywhere. There's also a DLC prequel, which is pretty cool. Honestly, just like an all-around amazing game. You should play it, because not enough people did. At number 11 is Mark of the Ninja, a side-scrolling action stealth game that is really fluid and fast. In all honesty, as far as 2D stealth, I don't think you're going to do better than this game. It's so ninja feeling, like it's literally about moving around quickly, getting behind things, getting into things, using a grappling hook. It's just a game that really takes its design elements and makes them into something that I would call greater than the sum of its parts, because I think you could describe it and it would sound like a lot of games, but it really is unique and incredibly fun. Mark of the Ninja is one you gotta play. It's out on pretty much everything. It originally came out in 2012. It got remastered for pretty much everything. Do it. At number 10 is Naruto to Boruto, Shinobi Striker. Basically, the point is you create your own ninja and you play in teams of 4 against other players online. It looks very different from a lot of Naruto games in that the backgrounds are very cartoonish, and really the type of game, it's not action-adventure, it's basically a fighting game. It is not the most advanced fighting game you're ever going to play, however, it is an incredibly fun game, and it is unique. In some ways, it vaguely reminds me of if Power Stone were much bigger, like in scale, but not entirely. It's incredibly fun though, give it a shot. It's out on pretty much everything. At number 9 is Tenchu Stealth Assassin, which is a third-person action-adventure stealth game series, which we've actually seen a couple of entries to over the years, the first being Stealth Assassins, the second being Shadow Assassins, the latter of which was actually developed by From Software, which I think is very interesting. The first game I can remember playing the hell out of because it was one of the better-looking games, which is funny when you look back on it now. But the second was a really interesting take on the type of formula it established. You can actually kind of see some of the fact that Sekiro is a bit of a descendant of Tenchu in some ways, in that that series has some bearing of influence over the formula they used in that game. A little harder to play these though. Shadow Assassins was a Wii game and a PSP game. At number 8 is Shadow Tactics Blades of the Shogun, which I think is possibly one of the coolest ideas on this list. It's a stealth-based real-time tactics game set in the Edo period of Japan. It's very much like Desperados, if you've ever played that. And you have a set of heroes with different skills that you sort of have to apply to different situations. It's, I think, a really good game. And like I said, probably one of the more innovative ideas on this list. Not that that automatically makes it better than every other game. It's not necessarily that, but it's certainly something unique. And I love Desperados, so I'm sort of partial to the type of gameplay this uses. It just applies it to the sort of samurai idea incredibly well. At number 7 is Bushido Blade. Now, Bushido Blade was actually a fighting game. It was a Squaresoft attempt at sort of creating a new fighting game franchise. Now, they did make 2 of them, Bushido Blade and Bushido Blade 2, and they had a very unique damage system, which did lots of different things based on where you hit somebody. It had a lot of sword play. There is actually a fair amount of exploration, which is not something that you normally see in a fighting game. And it took a few risks with the gameplay, injecting some stuff that you just don't normally see in fighting games, that I think both made it a very interesting and good game, and also made it hard for it to succeed because it was a bit different. I would say that's not a bad thing in this game's case, and if you have the ability to go back to PlayStation and give it a spin, I think you'll see exactly what I mean. It's a pretty innovative fighting game. At number 6 is the Ninja Gaiden series. We're specifically talking about the new version of it, not the old NES game. The new version is a hack and slash, which took a fairly cavalier attempt at the first one and then revamped the combat system in the second, which allowed dismemberment. This game is significantly less about stealth than almost any other game on this list. You are a powerful ninja and you don't care if you're seen. There is some wild crap that goes down when you're seen too, and like I said, it involves literally dismembering enemies. It's also known for being a really gory game, but that's not really the reason to play it. It's just kind of cool. At number 5 is Nioh and Nioh 2, a pair of games that, let's just go ahead and say, has established a very good Souls-like series that does a lot to give itself its own identity, which is very good. The first one was a bit more specific about its protagonist. The second one let you actually make your own protagonist. And the second one functioned as kind of a prequel for the most part, but some of it actually was post the first game's story. The second was obviously bigger in scope, as it tends to be with sequels. In truth, Nioh 2 builds on everything that the original does and kind of doesn't mess up any of the stuff that it does right. It's exactly what you want out of this kind of game. And I'm really hoping and looking forward to if they make Nioh 3 personally. And number 4 is Onimusha, a game that arose out of the idea of making Sengoku Biohazard, which would have been a Resident Evil game set in the Sengoku period in a ninja house with swords and shurikens and all of that. To me, that's like a super interesting idea, and it kind of panned out. I would say that Onimusha is a bit more of a hack and slash than Resident Evil, but as a series, it definitely ended up being a worthwhile one. There's a lot of different titles in it. They remastered it for PS4 recently. It was one they originally started to work on for PlayStation and eventually moved to PlayStation 2. It spanned every generation of consoles since then, and it's not hard to see why. Who doesn't want a game where you play as a samurai fighting demons? At number 3 is Way of the Samurai, an old PS2 game. It's of the action-adventure nature, as are many on this list. It did have a couple of sequels, but I think the most notable is probably the original, personally. The cool thing about it is that you can radically alter exactly how the story goes down, probably a lot more so than a lot of other games in this era, although it does culminate in 6 endings, which isn't massive, like a Silent Hill game would have that many endings. Still, it was definitely a very high-quality title for the time. It was really a good-looking game, looking back on it. Also, it just had really fun combat, sometimes that seemed really silly, partly because of the music, which, by the way, is pretty much always great anyways. I very fondly remember Way of the Samurai. I wish they would port that to current consoles. And number 2 is Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, which is, I've mentioned it already, talking about Tenchu. Really just a fantastic entry into the sort of Soulsborne genre, which incorporates a lot of Tenchu-oriented ideas. Not to the point where it remakes the formula entirely, but it does also give you this sort of rhythmic fighting that is very different, but also not so foreign that it's bizarre or anything. It's just a unique From Software title in that it tries a lot of different things while not really seeming to be alien in any way. It's also a gorgeous game that really does a lot with its visuals, and a lot of people consider it to be one of the, if not the masterpiece of From Software. I'm not sure if I count myself among those, but they do exist for sure, and they're loud. And finally, at number 1 is Ghost of Tsushima, which, I mean, what else can you really say about this game? This is really just a phenomenal game. One of the biggest, most beautiful open worlds I've ever seen. It emulates the look and feel of samurai films. It gives you a lot of different options as to how to play. I particularly like pulling some stealth in it. And we'd be remiss if we didn't mention that they have actually announced there's a new add-on that's going to give co-op to players who enjoy this game, which is, in my opinion, just a phenomenal development. It is a specific co-op experience with class-based development of the combat system. There's both story and wave-based survival missions. Honestly, I think it's going to be really cool. I'm looking forward to it a lot. Obviously, the main game itself is phenomenal, and I'm excited to play any add-on to it, especially a free co-op add-on. You don't get that kind of announcement too often. We also have a couple of bonus games for you. First one is going way back to 1991, Legend of the Mystical Ninja, which is kind of a really goofy action platformer that, honestly, I wish there were more games like. Next is Genji Dawn of the Samurai, which was a PlayStation 2 game, a hack and slash, with a couple of different characters with different abilities and statistics. Next is For Honor. It's basically a 3D fighting game, and honestly, the game itself is a ton of fun. And finally, Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance, which is probably the only mention of a technological samurai game, but it's really hard to call it anything other than that. He's very much a sort of ninja slash samurai, and you're using a ninja sword to ninja sword people in half. That's it's a Metal Gear game. It's also insane in the way every Metal Gear game is insane.